Hey guys, my name is Sounds, and today I've got a slightly different video for you. I'm going to be looking at and ranking the Death Knight cards. So, the Death Knight cards have come into the game with the new Knights of the Frozen Throne, and they've created a lot of interesting gameplay. I think on the whole it's been really successful, especially with everyone getting one free, so you do see them played, but some have definitely been better than others, so that's what we're going to be looking at today. So how do all do the Death Knights rank? Which one is the best and which one should you craft? So in this video I will be looking at the stats online from hsreplay.net. I want to say thank you to them for allowing me to use the data. I should let you guys know as well that they did give me a month's free subscription to their premium service. Just so you guys know, they haven't had any input into this video, they didn't ask me to make it, and also the video is not sponsored. To give you a background to the data, I've set the parameters to games played over the last 3 days so that we can see how the meta has changed since the nerf patches that was just released. And also to give you an idea of the numbers and the range of the data, the highest played card was 380,000 and the lowest was 36,000. So there is a very broad range of data which should give us some accurate results. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's take a look at some of the stats. Starting with which card is the most played. Now, this isn't going to tell us which is the best card, but it is going to give us some interesting information on the situation of the game. So, which is the most played card at the moment? Well, currently it is Shadow Reaper Anduin. So, Shadow Reaper Anduin has been played 380,000 times and it amounts to 0.5% of all of the cards played across Hearthstone at the moment. Interestingly, number 2 is actually Malfurion. Now, when I looked at these stats back further in time, Malfurion was played a lot more, and obviously the nerfs to the Druid has really affected this. So the percentage of played cards for Malfurion is 0.3%. In third place, with 0.2% played cards, is Deathstalker Rexar. Now this is quite interesting in that, in the same way we've seen Malfurion dip a little bit, we've actually seen Deathstalker Rexar rise in its popularity over the last few days. Number 4 is Thrall Deathseer, 0.2, and number 5, Blood Reaver Gul'dan, is 0.2% of played cards. Below that, then comes Frostwitch Jaina, Valeera, and Garrosh, and actually the least played card is Uther of Ebonblade, and that has only played 0.05% of all cards played. And that's not really a surprise given that there aren't too many decks at the moment that are popular that fit Uther into it. Murloc Paladin is very popular, but Uther doesn't really fit into that deck. So that's why we haven't seen it played very much. Surprise, really, it's one of my favourite cards, but it's not really fitting into the game right now. If we move on to look at the percentage of decks in which all of these cards are played, the ranking results are very similar to obviously the amount of times that they are played in the game. However, it gives us an interesting insight to how popular the Death Knights have been. So 59.3% of decks currently contain a Death Knight. So that is a real success for the new expansion, I would say. To have the majority of people playing with the Death Knight really shows that the cards have been designed well and people are enjoying them. Now, if we move on and look at the deck win rates, that's when the stats start to get really interesting. So, starting with the worst deck, unfortunately, Scourgelord Garrosh is right at the bottom of the pile with a 43.8% win rate. So, that to me isn't too much of a surprise. I think the only deck that really fits Garrosh into it at the moment is the Fatigue Warrior, and that is an incredibly complicated deck and really difficult to play. People are still experimenting with it, so you'd expect the win rate to be a bit lower. However, 43.8, it really isn't good enough for competitive play. I think in the right hands, though, that deck can get a much better win rate. Next, we've got Valeera the Hollow, 46.5% win rate. Again, this deck that people are playing right now with Valeera really isn't very strong, and a lot of people are playing it wrong, playing Valeera on the wrong turn, so I'd expect to see that quite low. Blood Reaver Gul'dan, a 48% deck win. This is a bit of a surprise for me. I would have thought a Control Warlock, which has historically been very good in the game, to be even more improved with Gul'dan. But a 48% win rate doesn't really reflect this, and I think the problem is at the moment that there aren't that many demons that you can play to bring back. There's only really 3 or 4 good demons that you can play to bring back, and then of course for it to work with Gul'dan you've got to have played them already when you draw Gul'dan. So that's why that's perhaps not working out at the moment. Next lowest, again still under 50% at 48.8, is Frostlich Jaina. This isn't a surprise to me so much. I just don't think the Elemental Mage is strong enough at the moment. I think Jaina is a good card, but perhaps hasn't got the deck to build it up at the moment. Uther of Ebonblade has got a 51% win rate, so it does suggest that Paladin is a kind of middling deck. Next is Shadow Reaper Anduin, 52.5% win rate. I think this is a very powerful card. In third place with a win rate of 54.6, this is Deathstalker Rexxar. Decks that contain Rexxar are generally pretty successful. This card has really improved the Hunter's late game, and that's why I'm not surprised to see it near the top. Number 2, Malfurion the Pestilent. So he's got a win rate of 55%. The surprising thing about this is that it's not at number 1, and I think that's because of the nerfs has affected Druid a little bit, so it's fallen back behind number 1, which at the moment is Thrall Deathseer, which is a surprise because this card's not really the most popular with people, given that when you play it you lose the totem ability, which is quite a key part of the token shaman, which really forms the basis of all the evolved shaman decks at the moment. But with a win rate of 55.5% in Thrall Deathseer decks, you can't really argue with that, and that is a very strong deck at the moment. Now, to really assess which is the best Death Knight, we can't just focus on the win rate of the deck. We also need to focus on the win rate when that card is played. So, as we know in Hearthstone, you don't always draw the cards you want, and the game sometimes finishes before you even do it. And that is one of the issues with the Death Knights, is it's because they're legendaries, you only have one copy, and sometimes it's at the bottom of your deck and you just don't get there. So when we look at played win rates, the picture is very different. So actually, this is a real surprise to me, but Deathstalker Rexxar is actually bottom of the list in terms of played win rate. So although the deck gets a win rate of 54.6, suggesting it's quite a capable deck, when this card is played, 40% of the time people lose. At 60% of the time people lose. And they only get a 40.1% win rate. And that is very surprising. However, I can only assume that it's because people aren't playing it correctly. Or playing it at the wrong time, or it's just arriving too late. Because the problem with Deathstalker Rexxar is that it doesn't really do very much on the turn you play it. You can deal 2 damage to all minions, but let's say you play it on turn 6. You can't use your hero power to build a beast that turn. Next turn's turn 7. If you do your hero power, you've only got 5 mana left to play that minion. So it really is kind of one that comes into play in the later game. Next up, unsurprisingly, is Valeera the Hollow. Given the played win rate of 46.7, it's not that surprising, and isn't hardly an improvement on the 46.5% deck win rate of the deck as a whole. So it suggests that it doesn't really impact the meta right now. Now, another interesting stat here is that Thrall Deathseer is actually 3rd from bottom. So your win rate actually goes down by just over a percentage point to 54.4 if you play Thrall Deathseer. So again, that could be a case of people not playing at the right time, or not playing it at all. I mean, this is one, when I've been playing the deck, I've found that Thrall isn't always good to play unless you've got a huge board. Because what you're really looking to do to win this with this deck is to play your doppelgangsters and evolve them. Now, if you play it with Thrall, you need 10 mana to do that, so it's not always easy to do. Next up is Garrosh. So this really shows the strength of this card. If it is played, it gets a 54.5% win rate in the deck. So that's pretty impressive, given that the actual overall win rate is 43.8. But it's not so much of a surprise, given that if you're playing the Fatigue Warrior and you get to turn 8 and you're able to play it, or if you can play it later on in the turns, it means that you're already in a quite strong position. This deck really wants to draw the game out, and the later you go on in the game, the stronger you become. So that's perhaps not so surprising. Next up is Malfurion the Pestilent. So with a deck win rate of 55% and a played win rate of 56.9, That suggests that perhaps this card isn't really needed in the deck. It doesn't really have much of an improvement, and let's be honest, the Druid is already quite strong as it is. It doesn't, I mean, although I think Malfurion's quite a strong card, I don't think it influences the current decks as much as it could do. Next, with a played win rate of 57.1 is Frostlich Jaina. Now, this really does show the strength of the card, because if you're playing Elemental deck and you don't get to play Jaina, you have a 48.8% win rate, which is pretty bad. Playing Jaina then pushes it up to 57.1 and makes it a good deck. So that really emphasises the strength of this card and really suggests that it is a good card. However, as I said before, you only get one of them in your deck, so you're not always going to draw it. Next up is Uther the Ebonblade with a 59% played win rate. So if you play that card, the deck wins 59% of the time. Again, if you're playing a Control Paladin and you make it to turn 9 and you can play this, then you're already in a kind of strong position, because you've already got control of the board, so that's perhaps not as surprising. In number 2 is Blood Reaver Gul'dan. Again, much like Frostlich Jaina, this emphasises really the strength of the card. 61% played win rate versus a deck win rate of 48%. So when you play it, there is an increase of 13% in your chances to win. Pretty impressive, but I just don't think the rest of the deck really stands up to it at the moment. So finally, with the best played win rate and with an impressive 63.9 is Shadow Reaper Anduin. The Razaka's Priest is very powerful at the moment. I think more people will move towards this deck now that Druid has stepped back a little bit. 63.9 is an impressive improvement on the actual deck win rate of 52.5. So playing it really does improve this, and that's kind of clear because that's the whole point and the win condition of that deck. Now that we've looked at all the stats, which Death Knight hero is actually the best and which one should you craft? Well, that's a very difficult question. It depends on what type of game you like to play. To me, I think all of the cards are very interesting. They've got their own unique spin on the game. I think as we see new expansions come in and new cards introduced, that some of the other heroes will start to become more of a game, because more part of the game, because I think Valeera, for example, doesn't really have a solid deck to go with it. I think Deathstalker Rexxar as well could get some more cards to really improve their deck. But if you're asking me which card is the most fun to play, I would probably pick 3. I would say Deathstalker Rexxar, Valeera the Hollow, and also a Thrall Deathseer. I just like playing Thrall and getting that extra 2 Evolve. It just creates some crazy games, and Evolve Shaman is actually one of my favourite decks to play at the moment. So which card do I think is the best, and which one should you craft? The winner is Shadow Reaper Anduin. Although I don't think this is the most fun card to play, just the deck, the overall strength of the deck that it's currently in, and also the win rate, a bonus you get when you actually play it, means that this is currently in this meta the best Death Knight. Now, the only problem with crafting this, you can't just go and craft it and suddenly you've got a great deck. And the problem is you need to have a number of other legendaries to make this deck viable. So the most successful deck with Anduin in at the moment costs 11,780 dust. And this is because you have to craft a number of other expensive cards to go along with Shadow Reaper Anduin. That is Prophet Valen, Raza the Chained, Lyra Sunshard, Kazakus, Bloodmage Thalnos is sometimes in there. You've also got a number of epics, Shadow Visions, Doomsayer, Curious Glimmerroot. It's not a cheap deck, so if you've got all these other cards, then great, Anduin could be the best Death Knight for you. So although Shadow Reaper Anduin is the best card at the moment in this meta in terms of being a Death Knight, if you haven't already got it, I would suggest that the best card for you to craft is Deathstalker Rexxar. Now the stats did show, interestingly, that when it was played the win rate is reduced, but that's because I think that the mid-range hunter is quite successful on its own at the moment, and you can win games just on its own. However, when you play Rexxar, you need to make sure you play it at the right time, because losing that to damage a turn to an opponent's face can be really important, especially if you're playing a mage who has ice block. You can just use your hero power and break it. So you really need to be careful when to play it. And also, because the Death Knights are legendaries and you don't always draw them, then it's really important to have a strong deck behind the Death Knight, because Anduin, again, if you don't draw him, then you're not going to win the game, because he is pretty much the win condition of that deck. Okay guys, well I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe because it helps me out a lot. Also let me know in the comments if you enjoyed it, because I'll make more videos like this if you're interested. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you soon.